Hey guys, tonight we drift far, far back. Before cities, before stories, before even the gods themselves had names. You're not standing on Earth, not really. There is no Earth yet. Just silence, unbroken and complete, stretching in every direction. A kind of silence that's so deep, you can almost hear it breathing. The air tastes like nothing. Your skin feels like thought. You're floating, weightless, formless, timeless, in the middle of everything, and also nothing. This is chaos. Not chaos as in mess or confusion, but chaos as in the gaping, yawning void from which all things spring. It's not dark exactly, but it's not light either. It just is. You try to look down. There's no down, only a slow pulse of something. Potential, maybe. A hum that grows louder the more still you become. And then, a shift. From chaos, something stirs. The first ripple of creation. Gaia, the earth, opens like a blooming stone. Solid, fertile, wide as forever. She doesn't speak, but she knows. Soon after, Uranus arrives. Sky himself, stretching across her back like a star-strewn shroud. He doesn't descend. He presses. And their union is strange, eternal, uncomfortable. Together, they form more beings. So many it's hard to keep count. You meet Nyx, the velvet-winged knight, and her twin brother Erebus, who smells of deep caverns and forgotten grief. There's Tartarus, a yawning pit even deeper than chaos, where things go when even chaos can't contain them. And Eros, yes, love, appears not as a baby with a bow, but as raw attraction, the force that compels things to seek one another. You're witnessing the birth of existence, moment by moment. You feel it in your breath, which is not really breath yet. Just the thrum of something becoming more than stillness. But Gaia's children aren't just beautiful. They're strange. Some are titans, tall and regal, full of stone and thunder. Some are monstrous. The Hecatonchires with 100 arms each, and the Cyclopes with their blazing single eyes. Uranus, the Sky Father, looks down at them in fear. These are not what he expected. He shoves them deep into Gaia's body, into Tartarus, hoping to forget them. But Gaia doesn't forget. She groans under the weight of her imprisoned children, and from that pain comes a plan. She shapes a sickle from stone and offers it to her son CRONOS, the youngest Titan, clever and cold. She asks him to do what she cannot. You stand beneath the sky as CRONOS waits. You hear the sky shiver. Then, suddenly, he strikes. The moment is quiet and terrible. Uranus is torn from the heavens, and the stars cry out. His blood falls into the sea, and from it rises a foaming, wild goddess. Aphrodite. Love born from violence. Gentle waves licking the edges of rage. CRONOS throws the sky's severed pieces into the ocean and claims the throne of the cosmos. It's the beginning of the Golden Age. At least for a while. You walk among mortals, not yet shaped from clay, but ideas whispering in the dirt. CRONOS rules with a calm that makes you uneasy. He smiles, but only with his eyes. The Titans build palaces and rivers, carve mountains like marble. But CRONOS keeps a secret fear pressed close to his ribs. The same prophecy that haunted his father. A child of his will rise and overthrow him. So CRONOS eats his children, one by one. You sit beside Rhea, his sister and queen, as she wraps yet another infant in swaddling cloth, not with love, but with dread. She hands the baby over, then substitutes a stone wrapped in the same blanket. CRONOS doesn't look. He swallows. He believes he is safe. But the child, Zeus, grows in hiding. On a mountain rich with goat's milk and ambrosia, he learns the skies. He hears the winds. He watches the world below, and soon he will return. Historians and poets still wonder, was chaos ever truly nothing? Or was it always waiting to become someone? You lie down among the stars, which are not yet stars, but sparks of becoming. You feel them buzz against your fingertips, like thoughts half-formed. You listen as the world reshapes itself. Stone rising from sea, sky parting from earth, order cracking like an egg. You wouldn't survive this beginning. Not really. The gods haven't yet learned mercy. The sky bleeds. The sea sings lullabies made of salt and foam. And time, ruled by CRONOS, chews everything until it's unrecognizable. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe. But only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And if you're listening from somewhere in the world tonight, let me know in the comments what city you're in and what time your dreams begin. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. Because this is only the beginning. And in Greek mythology, beginnings rarely stay quiet for long. You wake on a mountain that hasn't been named yet, under a sky that no longer fits like it once did. CRONOS reigns, and the Titans rule with a stillness that feels more like waiting than peace. You walk beside golden rivers and under trees that drip with nectar, but you can feel it in the wind. Something beneath this golden age is trembling. CRONOS is uneasy. He knows what he did. He knows that betrayal runs in the family like river water. His father, Uranus, was overthrown. And now, CRONOS dreams in fragments of sons with fire in their eyes and daughters who don't flinch when thunder cracks. So he swallows them. Not as infants. He doesn't wait that long. Hestia, Demeter, Hera, Hades, and Poseidon. He gulps them down whole, storing them like secrets in the deepest chamber of his belly. They do not die. They wait. But Rhea, their mother, does not forget. You follow her across a hidden landscape as she carries her last son in silence. She seeks shelter with Gaia, who still murmurs wisdom in her sleep. On the island of Crete, she gives birth in secret. The infant is swaddled in honey-scented cloth. His name is Zeus. To protect him, Rhea leaves a stone in his place, wrapped like a baby, placed into CRONOS's expectant hands. The Titan King swallows it without question. You wonder if he tasted the trick, or if denial tastes sweeter than truth. Meanwhile, Zeus grows, raised in a cave, nurtured by the goat Amalthea, guarded by dancers who clash their swords to drown his cries. He watches the skies from the shadows. He learns to shift clouds. He whispers to storms. And when he is grown, taller than trees and voice like rolling thunder, he knows what must be done. You return with him to the court of CRONOS. A clever poison, perhaps gifted by Metis, the goddess of cunning, makes the old king wretch. One by one, the swallowed siblings emerge, blinking into the world again, fully formed, fully furious. And so begins the Titanomachy. You stand at the edge of the battlefield and feel the mountain tremble beneath your feet. For 10 years, the war rages. Titans and Olympians clash with power you can't describe. Lightning scorches the sky. Mountains are thrown like stones. The air smells of ash and ozone. The Titans fight from Mount Othrys. The Olympians rise from Olympus. Ocean gods flood valleys. Earth gods split stone with their rage. Zeus leads, but he is not alone. He frees the Cyclopes from Tartarus, those one-eyed smiths of lightning, and they repay him by forging the thunderbolt. He frees the Hecatonchires too, those 100-armed giants, and they hurl mountains like pebbles against the Titan stronghold. CRONOS fights hard, but time doesn't favor him anymore. When the final bolt cracks the sky and the last Titan falls, you feel the silence ripple outward. The war is over. The defeated Titans are cast into Tartarus, guarded by the Hecaton Ceres. Only a few, Prometheus, Epimetheus, Oceanus, are spared. Zeus does not forget loyalty or usefulness. He takes the throne of the cosmos, and the new order begins. But even now, scholars whisper about the war. Was it truly between gods and titans? Or was it about ideas, chaos versus order, instinct versus intellect? Was the war literal, or was it myth's way of describing the transition from older beliefs to newer, shinier ones? No one knows for sure, not even the gods. You sit beside the rivers of the world and watch Olympus take shape. 12 thrones, 12 names. Zeus, with thunder in his palm. Hera, sharp-eyed and proud. Poseidon, restless as the sea. Hades, cloaked in silence and shadow. Demeter, watching crops like a mother watches sleep. Hestia, quiet flame in every hearth. And others. Athena, born of thought. Apollo, radiant with prophecy and song. Artemis, running with the wild. Ares, blood-drunk and impulsive. Aphrodite, soft and cruel. Hermes, wing-footed and always smirking. You watch them argue, feast, flirt, curse, create. They do not pretend to be perfect. They are petty, passionate, vengeful, bored. They squabble like siblings and seduce like strangers. They play with mortals not because they hate them, but because mortals are fascinating little mirrors. But above them all, Zeus reigns. He claims the sky, Poseidon, the sea, Hades, the underworld. The world is carved into thirds, not equally, but acceptably, for now. And you, still watching from the shadow of stories, begin to wonder, what happens when the gods who defeated monsters become monsters themselves? You wake to a stillness that doesn't last. The age of Zeus has begun, but the air is thick with echoes. There is a pause, brief, golden, fragrant with ambrosia, where everything seems in place. The Titans are defeated. Olympus gleams. The cosmos is organized, labeled, and stacked neatly into realms. And yet, you feel it, a rustle beneath the roots of the world, a stirring in the deep sea, a pulse in the stones, because even gods forget that power never stops moving. And just as CRONOS once feared his fall, Zeus begins to sense the same unraveling. But for now, the world is rich and strange. You walk among mountains where naiads bathe in crystal springs and dryads whisper from trees. Nymphs laugh behind waterfalls, and centaurs debate philosophy on winding paths. The world breathes with new life. Olympus watches and intervenes, often. Zeus is not idle. He rules, yes, but also wanders. Disguised as swans, bulls, golden rain, and thunderclouds, he courts and conquers mortals and nymphs alike. His lovers give birth to heroes, monsters, and more gods. You lose count. Hera, his queen, does not. You sit beside her once, in a garden made of peacocks and pomegranate seeds. Her silence says more than words. She is both goddess and wife, both loyalty and vengeance. When Zeus strays, she rarely punishes him. But his lovers, his children, they suffer. One of them is Hephaestus, thrown from Olympus as a newborn for being imperfect. He lands in the sea, raised by sea nymphs, and grows into the god of fire and forge. Lame-footed, but brilliant. He builds thrones that trap, automatons that dance, chains that hold gods still. Another is Athena, born from Zeus's forehead. Not a metaphor, a reality. You witness it. Zeus groans, clutching his head, and with a split of skull and thunder, out she steps, fully grown, armored, calm-eyed, the goddess of wisdom, war, and cities. But the other gods watch Zeus's rule with narrowed eyes. Poseidon, lord of the sea, tempers waves with his mood. Sometimes calm, often storming. He contests cities, hungers for recognition. You once hear him roar in frustration as Athena wins Athens through an olive tree instead of a salt spring. Hades, in contrast, says little. His realm is vast and cold, filled with silent souls and rivers that remember everything. He rules alone, no throne on Olympus. But he too makes a bold move. You walk the edge of a field with Persephone, daughter of Demeter. Flowers bloom in her footsteps. She bends to pluck a strange blossom. Then the earth cracks. A chariot bursts through. Hades takes her hand, takes her. She vanishes. Demeter searches. The world starves. Crops die. Mortals weep. Only when Persephone is found does the balance return, but only halfway. For each seed of pomegranate she ate in the underworld, she must spend 1 month below. 6 seeds, 6 months. Thus the seasons are born. You watch mortals trying to understand. They build temples. They light fires. They offer olive oil, honey, wine, and lambs. They carve perfect statues, hoping the gods will favor them. Sometimes it works. Sometimes it doesn't. And then Prometheus, the titan who sided with Zeus, the firebringer, the one who loves mortals a little too much. You sit beside him on a cold plain as he watches humans shiver in caves, helpless and fireless. He decides to change that. One night, he steals flame from the forge of Hephaestus, hides it in a hollow stalk of fennel, and brings it down like lightning in a bundle of sparks. Mortals rejoice. They bake, they shape, they warm, they evolve. Zeus is not pleased. As punishment, he chains Prometheus to a rock at the edge of the world. Each day, an eagle tears at his liver. Each night, it regrows. Eternally. You ask if he regrets it. He smiles, bloody, tired, and says, "No, this is the world now. A place where gods fall in love and punish. Where mortals rise and fail. Where knowledge is both gift and curse. Where fire comes with feathers, and yet, among the quiet, a box is being opened. But that's another story. Before you move forward, you lie back under the stars, feeling Olympus glow faintly above and Tartarus still breathing below. You realize something strange. For all their power, the gods don't feel like creators anymore. They feel like caretakers, or gamblers, or bored relatives who never quite left the family drama behind. Scholars still debate this. Did the Greeks ever believe in their gods? Or did they just accept them the way you accept seasons, or earthquakes, or thunder? Not good, not evil, just inevitable. You drift off as the wind rustles olive branches. And somewhere on Mount Olympus, Zeus dreams uneasily beneath a sky he no longer fully trusts. You open your eyes beneath a storm-lit sky. The air crackles. Something old and angry is coming. The peace atop Olympus has frayed, thread by golden thread, and now, beneath it all, you feel the earth stirring with teeth. Because even gods forget what they buried. Deep below the world, past roots and bones and sunless rivers, a creature awakens. A storm with scales. Typhon. You hear whispers that Gaia herself, enraged by Zeus's punishment of the Titans, birthed this final monster. Taller than mountains, arms that stretch across horizons, 100 snakeheads writhing, each speaking a different curse, fire spilling from every mouth. The gods don't laugh this time. You stand on Olympus as they scatter, fleeing in panic. Some leap into the sea, others transform into animals. Apollo becomes a hawk. Artemis, a cat. Even mighty Ares runs. Only Zeus stands firm. The battle is cataclysmic. You watch from behind a cracked pillar as lightning rains like meteors. and Typhon lifts mountains in his hands like children's toys. At one point, the beast rips the sinews from Zeus's limbs and hides them in a cave guarded by a she-dragon. For a moment, the king of gods lies helpless, but he returns. He always does. With help from Hermes and Pan, Zeus reclaims his strength. He rises. He strikes. The final blow comes not with a cheer, but a silence so complete it rings. Typhon falls, and the earth swallows him. Some say he's buried beneath Mount Etna. Others say he still breathes under the Aegean, shaping storms. No one knows for sure. But the point is made. Zeus rules. For now, you watch as the gods slowly return. They do not speak of their retreat. They sit on their thrones, straighten their robes, pretend the sky never shook. But the fear lingers. To distract themselves, the gods build more. More creatures, more trials, more dramas. Poseidon fathers Pegasus by striking Medusa's severed head. Athena raises the first spider when she punishes Arachne for weaving a tapestry too perfect. Artemis, insulted once by a mortal hunter named Actaeon, turns him into a stag and watches as his own hounds tear him apart. The stories multiply. You wander the halls of Olympus and realize something. These aren't gods of moral clarity. They're gods of behavior, of balance, of overstep and consequence. They teach less through reward than through punishment, and often the lesson is know your place. But then, mortals start stepping out of line. You meet Niobe, a queen who boasts that she has more children than Leto, the mother of Apollo and Artemis. A bold claim, a foolish one. You watch, helpless, as the twin gods descend. One by one, her children fall, arrows like whispers. At the end, Niobe flees to Mount Sipylus and becomes stone, frozen mid-sob. A waterfall now pours from her eyes. Even silence can weep. Elsewhere, Tantalus offers the gods a feast of his own son. A test, a joke, a punishment. He is damned to Tartarus, forever reaching for fruit that shrinks away and water that vanishes at his lips. You see him still, arms outstretched, the eternal almost. You wonder, why do so many of these stories end in punishment? And yet, it's not cruelty, not really. It's pattern. The gods respond to hubris, excessive pride, as a musician tunes a string. Sharp, loosen it. Flat, pull tight. The cosmos, to them, is a lyre. And every life, a note. Sometimes the notes scream, but not all is fury. You pass through groves where Hermes teaches young shepherds how to charm sheep with pipes. You see Hephaestus crafting automata, golden servants who glide silently through his forge. You watch as Dionysus brings joy and madness to distant lands, wine dripping from ivy-wrapped goblets. There's beauty too, poetry, celebration. You attend a festival in Athens under a full moon, where mortals sing hymns and act out the tales of the gods. You sit beside a boy who asks whether Zeus really threw bolts or just frightened people into explaining thunder. You have no answer. Scholars now argue that Greek mythology isn't about belief. It's about explanation. The world was too strange, too brutal, too exquisite to not be speaking somehow. So the Greeks gave it a voice. Many voices. Loud, flawed, divine. You walk the earth and see the aftermath of Typhon still in the crags and volcanoes. You see Niobe in waterfalls. You hear Tantalus in the gurgle of unreachable springs. You feel Athena's owl watching from a cypress tree just above your shoulder, and in the distance, thunder again, because power always trembles, and something new is being born. This time not a god, but a creature caught between divine and mortal. You hear the first whisper of a name. Heracles. You follow the echo of that name, Heracles, across cliffs and valleys, down winding trails where olive trees lean in to listen. You know the name before the story, as if the syllables have weight, gravity, promise. And when you find him, you understand why. He's not just a man. He's not just a god. He's the strange, stitched space between. Heracles is born of Zeus and a mortal woman, Alcmene. Which is to say, his story begins in scandal. You hear the tale whispered from temple walls. Zeus disguises himself as Alcmene's husband. The night lasts longer than it should. Hera, the ever-watchful queen, finds out. And what follows is not wrath. It's orchestration. Hera doesn't strike Alcmene. She doesn't hurl lightning. No, she sends pain through subtle doors. First, she delays the birth. Then she tries to kill the child with serpents. You stand in the shadows of the nursery and watch baby Heracles, still soft, still blinking, reach out with chubby fists and strangle the snakes sent to end him. No training, no fear, just instinct. The gods take notice. Heracles is raised by mortals, but Olympus never forgets him. He grows large, awkward, full of strength he doesn't yet understand. You walk beside him as he snaps a lyre in half when a music lesson goes wrong. He tries to smile, but already carries the weight of being more than mortal. And then, the madness. Hera, still watching, sends a haze over his mind. He sees phantoms. In that daze, he kills his wife and children. When the cloud lifts, he remembers everything. This is the part most people forget. The strongest man in myth starts his legend not with conquest, but with unbearable guilt. To atone, he seeks the oracle at Delphi, who tells him to serve a king named Eurystheus, and to complete 12 impossible tasks. You follow him on the path of penance. First, he strangles the Nemean lion, its golden hide impervious to weapons. Heracles chokes it barehanded, then wears its pelt as armor. You see the cloak ripple like a storm cloud behind him. Next, the Lernaean Hydra, a swamp of rot. One head removed, two grow back. He burns the neck stumps to stop the regeneration, a detail often missed. His nephew Iolaus helps. Even heroes need allies. The list goes on. The Ceryneian hind, swift and sacred to Artemis. The Erymanthian boar, snarling on icy cliffs. The Augean stables, filled with immortal dung. He reroutes a river. You laugh, because sometimes heroism is plumbing. You watch him capture birds made of bronze, chase a bull across Crete, and steal man-eating mares from Thrace. Each task grows stranger, more symbolic, less about strength, more about restraint. The ninth labor, stealing the belt of Hippolyta, queen of the Amazons, almost ends in peace. But Hera whispers lies, and blood spills. The 10th, cattle of Geryon, 3 bodies, 1 soul. You lose count of the hoofbeats. Then comes the most mythic, fetching the golden apples of the Hesperides, guarded by a dragon, or maybe by trickery. Some say he convinces Atlas to fetch them, then deceives the Titan into holding up the sky again. Even the stories can't decide, but it's the 12th that still haunts you. Heracles must descend into the underworld to bring back Cerberus, alive. You walk with him through the mists, past the river Styx, where Charon ferries the silent and the damned, past the fields where heroes rest and the asphodel meadows where most souls wander without memory. And there, looming, snarling, is Cerberus. 3 heads, serpent tail, eyes like furnaces. Heracles does not fight him. Not truly, he asks, and Cerberus allows it. He returns, victorious, but not unchanged. Historians debate whether the labors are literal or allegorical. Some say they map the sun's path through the zodiac. Others say they mirror the soul's journey through suffering and discipline. You're not sure, but you know Heracles is tired. His labors don't make him free. They make him known. That's not the same. He joins the Argonauts, marries again, fights, wanders, is poisoned, not in battle, but by a wife who thought she was using a love charm. The pain is unbearable. He builds his own funeral pyre And when he dies, he doesn't vanish. The mortal part burns. The divine part rises. Zeus brings him to Olympus, offers him a seat among the gods. Even Hera relents, giving him her daughter, Hebe, as wife. You climb the mountain with him one last time and sit beside a fire that doesn't burn. Heracles, god of strength, god of endurance, god of what survives. And behind you, the world stirs with new names. Perseus, Jason, Atalanta. And the great war still to come. You sit beneath an olive tree, and the wind carries the names of heroes like petals caught in time. Not gods, not quite, but not merely men either. Born from divine mishap or favor, each steps into the world like a flicker of fire, bright and brief. Now comes Perseus. You hear the whisper of his tail and the clink of bronze sandals. Son of Zeus and Danae, who was imprisoned in a bronze tower to avoid a prophecy. Zeus, ever persistent, finds his way in as golden rain. That's the kind of story it is. You walk the shoreline where Danae and infant Perseus are set adrift in a wooden chest. The sea, often cruel, chooses mercy. They land safely. Perseus grows under the watchful eye of fate. His task is the kind legends envy. Bring back the head of Medusa. You follow him to the edge of the known world. He receives gifts. Winged sandals from Hermes, a reflective shield from Athena, a curved blade forged by divine hands. He does not look Medusa in the eyes. He uses the shield as a mirror, striking her while her serpents hiss. The moment is silent. The head severed. But even in death, her gaze still turns flesh to stone. On his return, he rescues a princess, Andromeda, chained to a rock. A sea monster looms. You've seen this image before, painted on pots, etched in temples. The perfect hero, triumphant and shining. But what they don't show is the weariness in his shoulders. The weight of that head wrapped in cloth. The fear that he might glance at it by mistake. You blink, and another tale begins. Jason and the Argonauts. You board a ship built with a sacred beam of oak, gifted by the goddess Hera herself. The Argo carries the best of Greece. Orpheus, the musician, Castor and Pollux, the divine twins, and even Heracles, for a time. They seek the golden fleece. You sail through clashing rocks, past singing sirens, through treacherous straits that gulp ships like peanuts. You meet Medea, a sorceress, a princess, a problem. Jason wins the fleece, yes, but only through Medea's love and cunning. He promises her the world, then later breaks that promise. You hear her cry one night, a sound that curdles milk and bends moonlight. The ending of her tale is not gentle. You don't retell it before bed. Instead, you walk with Atalanta, swift as any god, abandoned at birth, suckled by a she-bear, raised in the wild. She outruns every suitor, racing for her own freedom, until one man cheats, dropping golden apples to distract her. She slows, she loses, she marries. Later, the gods punish them both for some forgotten transgression. They are turned into lions, not together, just lions, still running, still apart. You rest now, surrounded by the afterglow of all these stories. They don't overlap neatly. Some contradict, some end too soon, some never end at all. Even now, scholars debate whether these figures were ever real. Perhaps Perseus was a constellation before he was a name. Maybe Jason's voyage is a distorted memory of early trade. Maybe Atalanta is every woman who ever ran faster than the rules allowed. But then you remember something else. The gods still intervene. Zeus appears in flashes. Athena whispers in dreams. Hera plots. Poseidon storms. The line between mortal and divine is more like mist than stone. And always the mortals suffer for it. Because that's the cost of standing too close to the source of light. You burn or you fade. You climb a hill at dusk and look over the sea, quiet now. You think of Medusa's head, still dangerous, of Jason's broken promise, of Atalanta's sprint slowed by gold. Not all myths are victories. Some are warnings dressed as miracles. Still, the stories linger. And beyond the horizon, you feel it coming. A war. One so big, even the gods won't leave untouched. You wake to the sound of wedding bells. Not mortal bells, not temple bells, but a sound older and stranger. Deep, echoing, like iron striking the rim of the sky. A god is getting married. Peleus, a mortal king, and Thetis, a sea nymph, chosen by fate and reluctantly by Zeus himself. The gods descend from Olympus, their laughter ringing through the hills. Ambrosia flows, lyres play, even the wind seems to hold its breath. But one goddess is not invited. Eris, goddess of discord, arrives anyway. You sit near the back, beside a half-drunk satyr and a raven who won't stop muttering names. Eris tosses a golden apple into the crowd, inscribed with 3 words, "To the fairest." And just like that, the sky fractures. 3 goddesses step forward. Hera, queen of power, Athena, goddess of wisdom, and Aphrodite, goddess of love. Each claims the apple. Each demands the title. You already know how this ends. Zeus, wisely avoiding judgment, appoints Paris, a prince of Troy, to decide. You follow Hermes as he leads the young prince to the goddesses. One by one, they offer bribes. Hera offers kingship. Athena offers glory in battle. Aphrodite offers love. Paris chooses love. A face, Helen's, becomes a fuse. You walk beside Paris as he sails to Sparta. Helen greets him. Some say she chooses to go. Others say she is taken. Historians still argue. You only know the ships that follow, 1,000 of them. The Trojan War begins not with blood, but with promises. Oaths sworn long ago by Helen's suitors to defend her marriage, whoever won it. You watch them gather. Agamemnon, proud and angry. Menelaus, wronged and furious. Achilles, golden and dangerous. Odysseus, clever and reluctant. You sail with them to Troy, where the walls are high and the stakes higher. The war lasts 10 years. You don't see all of it. No one does. But you hear fragments like wind through broken shields. Achilles sulks in his tent, insulted over honor. Patroclus dons his armor and dies. Achilles returns, not for glory, but grief. You watch him drag Hector's body around the walls day after day, until even the gods ask for mercy. Eventually, Achilles dies too. An arrow to the heel, the one part his mother couldn't protect. Some say it was Apollo who guided Paris's hand. Others say it was luck. You wonder what the difference is. The gods do not just observe the war. They choose sides. Hera, Athena, and Poseidon back the Greeks. Aphrodite and Apollo favor Troy. Zeus pretends neutrality, but no one believes him. You stand beside rivers stained with heroism. You hear the chants, the cries, the clanging of blades. You smell smoke and salt. You realize that this war isn't about Helen anymore. It never was. It's about pride, prophecy, the lines between men and gods. And then, the horse. You follow Odysseus as he whispers the idea. A gift. Hollow. Beautiful. Left at the gates as if in surrender. You see the Trojans drag it inside. That night you hear no drums, just fire. When the sun rises, Troy burns. The temples crack. The altars fall. Priam is slain at the altar. Cassandra, cursed to be disbelieved, screams warnings until her voice breaks. Aeneas flees with his father on his back. His story will carry westward into other empires, other myths. The Greeks win, but no one leaves unchanged, not even the gods. You wander the smoky ruins, watching the crows settle like punctuation marks. And in the silence after, you hear a whisper. Odysseus. He's not home yet. You drift now on wine-dark seas, sails heavy with ash and story. The war is over, but peace refuses to arrive. Odysseus, clever, silver-tongued king of Ithaca, has not returned home. 10 years he fought for glory. 10 more he'll spend trying to escape it. You stand beside him on the deck of a creaking ship. The horizon blurred with fog and divine delay. The sea doesn't offer direction. It offers detour. First, the CRONOS, a raid gone wrong. Then the Lotus Eaters, where memory dissolves like sugar in rain. You take a bite of the flower and feel yourself forget why you ever left home. Odysseus pulls you back. Then, the Cyclops. You enter the cave, and the stench hits first. Sour milk, sheep dung, something iron and old. Polyphemus is massive, a walking cliff with one eye and no patience. He eats 2 men, then 2 more. You hear Odysseus lie, calling himself nobody. Later, after stabbing the Cyclops' eye and escaping beneath sheep bellies, he yells his real name into the wind, Odysseus. You wonder if that was pride or prophecy. Because Polyphemus is Poseidon's son, and Poseidon never forgets. The sea turns against you. Every wave becomes a judgment. Every island, a test. Aeolus gives you a bag of winds. You nearly make it home, until your crew, thinking it gold, opens it. The storm returns. You're blown back. You reach the land of the Laestrygonians, giants who smash your ships like toys. Then Circe, the sorceress. Her island hums with illusion. She turns men to pigs, but spares Odysseus, charmed by his guile, or perhaps his fate. You stay a year. You forget the calendar. Eventually, with help from Hermes, you leave, but not for home. Not yet. You descend instead to the underworld. You walk with Odysseus past the ghost of his mother, who speaks with tears and smoke. You meet Achilles, who says, "I'd rather be a slave on earth than a king among the dead." You hear Tiresias' prophecy. Suffering still awaits. You return to the living, but something inside you stays behind. Next, the sirens. You plug your ears with wax, but Odysseus, curious as always, ties himself to the mast. Their song is not sweet. It is true. It sings of your name, your secrets, your deepest wants. You almost beg to be untied. Then Scylla and Charybdis. You steer between the 6-headed monster and the whirlpool. You lose more men. You do not look back. At last, Thrinacia, the island of the sun. You're warned. Do not touch the cattle. But hunger makes philosophers of everyone. The crew slaughters a few. When you sail again, Zeus sends a storm. Everyone dies but Odysseus. You wake with him on Ogygia, Calypso's island. She offers him immortality. He refuses. 7 years pass. Only when the gods intervene does he leave, on a raft, alone. Poseidon sends one final storm, but this time it breaks without killing. Odysseus washes up on Scheria, land of the Phaeacians. He tells his story, your story, by firelight. And the king, moved, sends him home, to Ithaca, at last. You walk with him in disguise, through his own halls now overrun with suitors. His wife, Penelope, still weaves and unweaves hope each night. His son, Telemachus, grown and searching for a father he barely remembers. With bow in hand, Odysseus reveals himself. The slaughter is swift. Revenge, served after decades of wandering, tastes cold and final. But you wonder, was the real enemy distance, or the expectation of what waited at the end? Scholars still debate. Was the Odyssey about homecoming, or was it about the refusal to forget? You stand in the quiet of Ithaca's dawn, the sea now calm behind you. And you know, some journeys never end. They just slow and sleep until the gods call again. You descend now into silence, the kind of silence you can hear, deep and endless, echoing through caverns that don't remember the sun. This is the underworld, not hell, not punishment, though it holds plenty of that. Just the place where souls go when breath leaves the body. and names fade from memory. You drift across the river Styx, ferried by Charon, his face hidden in the folds of his hood, his oar slicing black water with the sound of a heartbeat underwater. You carry a coin in your mouth. Without it, you'd be left behind. On the far bank, three-headed Cerberus waits. But he doesn't bark. He watches. You nod. He nods back. You pass. Hades rules here. Not with fire, but with stillness. He sits on a throne of obsidian and shadow, flanked by Persephone, whose presence changes everything. Half the year, she brings bloom and warmth. The other half, she is queen of silence. Her gaze is not cold. It is measured. You walk through the fields of asphodel, where most souls drift without joy or pain. Just are. Blurred, whispering fragments of their former selves. Heroes sometimes end up in the Elysian fields, where the breeze is soft and the memories stay gold. But even here, even in peace, you feel the weight of what's been lost. Tartarus lies deeper still. You hear its gates before you see them. Iron grinding against stone, a door so old it forgets what it guards. Inside, you sense the punishment of ancient sins. Titans condemned. Tantalus ever-reaching. Sisyphus, rolling his boulder endlessly uphill. You pass Tityos, whose liver is torn by vultures. Ixion, spinning on a wheel of fire. Not because they erred, but because they challenged the divine. You glance back, wondering what mortal crime earns eternal echoes. But you also wonder, are these stories? Or are they metaphors, given flesh to make a point? Some scholars suggest the underworld reflects Greek anxieties about memory. That oblivion, not suffering, was the greatest fear. That to be forgotten was the worst fate. You walk past the Lethe, the river of forgetting. Its waters shimmer, inviting you to rest. To release names, love's past mistakes. You hesitate. Dip a finger in. The numbness creeps up your wrist. You pull back. Not yet. You hear the voice of Orpheus, faint and trembling. He sings for Eurydice, his lost love, whose soul he almost led back to life. But he looked too soon. One glance, one moment of doubt, and she was gone again, her hand slipping from his forever. You pass the spot where they once stood. Nothing marks it, only the echo of what could have been. You notice how the underworld isn't hot or fiery. It's quiet. A place of boundary, of finality. There is no judgment here like in modern myths. No weighing of hearts or flaming swords. Just consequence. Just stillness. And yet, the gods still visit. You remember Demeter's footsteps, carving the seasons into the land. You remember Odysseus' journey through the mist, speaking with ghosts who know more than the living. And one day, Orpheus won't be the only one who sings in darkness. There is another story, one older than it sounds, about a mortal who loved the wrong goddess. About a punishment that was not pain, but time. His name was Adonis. And when he died, Aphrodite wept with such beauty that spring bloomed through her tears. You wonder, do the gods come here to grieve? You hear their names in the dark. Hades, Persephone, Thanatos. They do not offer terror. They offer certainty. And sometimes, in a world ruled by caprice and chaos, certainty is a gift. You sit beside the river Cocytus, river of wailing, and listen. There's no scream, no fury. Just the sound of what isn't anymore. And in this quiet, you understand something the gods cannot undo. Even eternity is shaped by endings. You rise again, not from death, but from depth. The underworld fades behind you, like a dream you can't quite shake. And now you walk among stories that flicker like torches before they vanish. The age of myth is beginning to shift. Heroes are dying. The gods are watching from farther away. And in their silence, something new emerges. Questions. You step into Athens. It smells of olive oil, sea breeze, and slow-burning thought. Marble columns rise around you like frozen waves, and everywhere you turn, mortals are thinking. Not just fighting or praying, but wondering. What are the gods? Who made them? And what if the stories we tell are just mirrors held up to ourselves? You hear a man named Socrates, barefoot in the marketplace, asking questions that make people uncomfortable. What is justice? What is virtue? If a god tells you something, how do you know it was truly a god? He never writes anything down. Others do that for him. You sit in a shady grove as Plato records his teacher's thoughts. He writes of ideal forms, eternal truths, and a realm more perfect than Olympus ever claimed to be. The myths become metaphors. The gods become allegories. Athena becomes wisdom. Dionysus becomes madness and art. You hear of Pythagoras, who sees divinity in numbers, of Anaximander, who wonders if the world began not with gods, but with a Pyrrhon, the boundless, of Heraclitus, who says, "You cannot step into the same river twice." You think of the river Lethe. You nod. And in this age, the myths don't disappear. They deepen. The Iliad and the Odyssey are taught in schools. Dramas are performed at festivals, watched by thousands. Aeschylus, Sophocles, Euripides. They take the old gods and make them ask new questions. You sit in the amphitheater as Medea weeps, as Oedipus blinds himself, as Antigone defies a king to honor her brother. The chorus sings. The gods are still invoked, but now they're quieter. Less like thunder, more like fate's shadow, a curious detail. In some plays, the deus ex machina, the god from the machine, descends on a crane to wrap things up. You watch the audience nod, even as they squint at the wires. The illusion is part of the ritual. They believe. Just enough. Meanwhile, temples still stand. You visit Delphi, where the oracle speaks in riddles. You hear her murmur, "Know thyself." No straight answers, only mirrors. You walk past the Parthenon, built for Athena. You see her statue, towering in gold. But something about it feels more like a symbol than a spirit now. The gods haven't vanished. They've retreated into stone, into story, into the minds of men who no longer need thunder to explain the weather. And yet, the myths remain woven into everything. You read medical texts invoking Apollo, navigation guided by Poseidon's will, courtroom oaths sworn by Zeus's name. Even as new ideas bloom, the old ones linger like perfumes on a breeze that's moved on. And then, something shifts again. Alexander rises. You watch him sweep across Persia, Egypt, and India. Not just with swords, but with scrolls. He brings Greek myth with him. He calls himself son of Zeus. He sacrifices to Heracles. His conquests become a vehicle for myth, spreading it across continents like wildfire. You hear whispers in Egypt, Horus compared to Apollo. In Babylon, Ishtar and Aphrodite trade stories. Greek gods do not vanish, they migrate. And in that movement, you feel myth expanding, slipping past borders, threading into other faiths, other dreams. You sit beneath a fig tree and wonder, was Athena ever real? Or did she simply become the shape of a question asked for so long it developed a name? Philosophers still debate this. Was Greek mythology a religion, a language, a metaphor, or a survival mechanism? You don't know. You only know that in the spaces where logic falters and certainty wavers, the myths still bloom, like wildflowers in the cracks of marble. You blink, and centuries pass. Stone temples grow moss. Statues lose noses, arms, context. Yet even as empires fall and cities sink into sand, the myths do not die. They change clothes. You walk through Rome now. It hums with roads and rhetoric, arches and ambition. But look closer, and you'll see familiar faces. Zeus is here, but called Jupiter. Hera becomes Juno. Ares is Mars. Poseidon, Neptune. Athena, now Minerva. They've been renamed, rebranded, adjusted to Latin tongues, but not forgotten. You recognize them by their posture, their power, the way they lean toward mortals just before everything goes wrong. You attend a Roman triumph, a celebration of conquest, and see the gods invoked on banners, their statues pulled beside the spoils. Jupiter watches from above the Capitoline Hill, smiling with borrowed thunder. But something's different here. Rome doesn't worship the gods the same way. It uses them. Jupiter justifies laws. Mars sanctifies violence. Venus becomes not just a goddess of love, but the divine ancestor of emperors. You stand beside a soldier who claims to be descended from Aeneas, the Trojan who fled burning walls to become Rome's seed. You walk with Virgil as he pens the Aeneid, Rome's answer to Homer. A tale crafted not from memory, but mission. A myth with civic purpose. You admire its rhythm. But you also notice the gods here are more distant, more strategic. Tools of destiny rather than shapers of chaos. Still, temples rise. You visit the Pantheon, marveling at its oculus, a hole in the ceiling where light spills in like blessing. You realize the Romans built it not for one god, but for all. A temple of inclusion, or perhaps of indecision. Quirky fact. Romans often fused their gods with local deities as they expanded. They welcomed Isis from Egypt, Mithras from Persia, Sibyl from Anatolia. You see altars layered like strata of belief. The gods blur, stories blend. Then comes a whisper, a new belief carried by traders, slaves, and fishermen. A single god, invisible, eternal, not born from chaos, not subject to time. You watch the old world tilt. Christianity grows slowly, then suddenly. First persecuted, then tolerated, then adopted. Constantine converts. Edicts are signed. And the temples of Apollo become churches. Statues are broken or baptized. Some myths are burned. Others are simply forgotten. You return to Delphi. But the oracle is silent now. The spring still bubbles, but no voices rise. You walk through abandoned sanctuaries, columns toppled like chess pieces. The gods no longer speak in thunder or riddles. They speak in fragments, footnotes, metaphors, and yet you sit with Ovid in his exile, reading Metamorphoses by candlelight. He doesn't worship the gods. He remembers them. He retells their stories, not to preach, but to preserve. He turns myth into poetry, and in doing so, ensures they'll outlive the temples. Centuries pass again. You wake in the Renaissance, Greek statues dug from vineyards, scrolls recopied, myths painted in fresco and gold. Botticelli paints Venus rising from a shell. Michelangelo sculpts David, not as king, but as hero. Zeus returns in allegory. Athena in universities. Scholars rediscover Plato. Children learn of Heracles. Artists pray to muses, even if they no longer believe they're listening. The myths live on, not as faith, but as inheritance. You hear modern minds debate them. Some say the gods were never real. Others say they were symbols, archetypes, reflections of our best and worst instincts. You sit between them and smile, because whether or not Athena ever walked in sandals of wind, her wisdom still echoes. Whether or not Dionysus truly danced through vineyards, his wildness still breathes in poems and parties. The gods do not die. They sleep. They slip. They wait until someone says their name. And just like that, Olympus flickers back to life. You sit at the edge of a bookshelf, ink smudging your fingers. Now, the myths no longer live in stone. They live in stories, bound in pages, spoken aloud in lecture halls and podcast microphones. The age of belief has faded, but the age of meaning? That's just begun. You pick up a book. Maybe it's Edith Hamilton. Maybe it's Robert Graves. Maybe it's a comic book with capes and lightning bolts. The names are the same: Zeus, Apollo, Artemis, Hades. But the colors are brighter now, the tragedies more compact, the gods more human, or the humans more divine. You leaf through chapters where heroes fight not only monsters, but metaphors. Medusa is no longer just a creature with snakes for hair. She's a mirror for how we treat women who hold power. Prometheus isn't just a fire thief. He's the first rebel, the patron saint of artists and hackers and anyone who says no to tyranny. And yet, even now, scholars can't agree. Was Hades cruel or misunderstood? Was Persephone a prisoner or a queen? Was Achilles truly invincible, or simply unwilling to bend until it broke him? You walk into a museum, cold marble echoing under your shoes, and stand before a broken statue of Heracles. One arm gone, beard chipped. Still, you recognize him. The weight of the world once rested on his shoulders. Now, just the gaze of tourists and time. You notice a label, uncertain origin. That phrase again, uncertainty. You hear echoes of myth in language. A Herculean task, a Trojan horse, an Achilles' heel. These are not just references. They are ghosts, lingering fingerprints of a mythology that never quite let go. And now you scroll. Myths live online too. In memes, in fan art, in video games where you play as gods or kill them, in stories where Athena rides a motorcycle or Hades falls in love with a barista. Is it disrespect? No, it's reinvention. The same kind that birthed myth in the first place. Because long ago, someone watched the sky crack with lightning and said, "That's Zeus, angry." Now, someone sees heartbreak and says, "That's like Orpheus losing Eurydice." The setting changes. The truths don't. You sit in a theater. A new play unfolds. Maybe it's Hades Town, or a Netflix adaptation, or a school performance with cardboard wings and paper crowns. And again, the stories live. They adapt. You hear Persephone sing. You see Icarus fly too close, not to the sun, but to the bright screen of a dream he couldn't sustain. You feel a lump in your throat and realize these myths weren't meant to explain the world. They were meant to feel it, and they still do. Even in space, you find echoes. NASA names moons and planets after titans. Spacecrafts bear names like Apollo, Artemis, Atlas. You look up at the night sky, and it looks back, with names older than nations. One star blinks. Maybe it's Orion, maybe it's just dust. But you still tell yourself the story, because you need it, because humans always have. The myths you walk through now aren't told in temples. They're told in bedrooms, in whispered bedtime tales, in YouTube videos where someone speaks softly through your headphones, easing you into sleep with the weight of timeless stories. And isn't that what myth has always been? A lullaby. For civilizations that needed to believe something was watching, or listening, or remembering. You close the book. Not because the story's done, but because night has crept into the corners of your room, and the gods are starting to whisper again. You think of Hermes, fast and clever, carrying words across centuries. You think of Hestia, goddess of the hearth, still glowing in every home with a nightlight or candle. You think of chaos, the first void, and how, out of silence, came story, and still comes. Even now, you sit beneath a cypress tree that never truly died. The breeze carries 100 voices, some in ancient Greek, others in English, and a few in languages yet to be born. They all hum with the same tune. Once upon a time, the world was young, and the gods walked among us. You lean back and trace the arc of a myth not through temples or battles, but through memory. Because myths are not only about the past, They are how cultures remember what they dare not forget. You recall Gaia, the earth, birthing Uranus, the sky. Then CRONOS, devouring his children in fear. And Zeus, rebellious and bright-eyed, toppling time itself. You remember how power changed hands like a flame passed in the dark. How Poseidon took the seas, Hades the shadows, and Zeus the throne. You remember Athena emerging fully armed from thought, Aphrodite rising from sea foam, and Artemis demanding her solitude even as she guided the moon. And you know, these stories weren't made to teach facts. They were made to hold feeling. Still, for every golden chariot, there is a shadow. You recall the Furies, those goddesses of vengeance. The ones who never forget a wrong. They remind you that Greek mythology never promised comfort, only complexity. Even the noblest gods could fall to jealousy, vanity, wrath. Even the monsters, Medusa, Hydra, the Minotaur, have tales older than fear. Some scholars now say Medusa was once a priestess, punished for being violated. Others say the labyrinth was not a prison, but a map of the mind. Confusion made stone. Even the Hydra, with its heads multiplying in death, feels like a symbol of grief that refuses to fade. You begin to see it. Each myth is a code, each character a cipher, and together, they form a dream logic that tells you not what happened, but what it felt like to be human when no one understood thunder. There's a moment in Hesiod, an old poet, old even by ancient standards, where he writes of the 5 ages of man: gold, silver, bronze, heroic, and iron. He believed we lived in the Iron Age, hard, dark, fragile, but perhaps he misunderstood. Perhaps mythology itself is what carries gold into iron, a kind of thread through the decay, a reminder that meaning doesn't come from power, but from the stories we tell when no one's listening. You sit by a pool where Narcissus once gazed, and you see your own reflection. You look into the water, and for a heartbeat, you're not sure if it's you or some long-lost shepherd dreaming of stars. Because that's the thing about myth. It blurs, it loops, it sneaks up on you in unexpected forms. You read psychology, and there's Oedipus. You watch a movie, and there's the tragic fall of Icarus. You scroll TikTok, and someone's lip-syncing a speech from Hades in Hadestown, or drawing a comic about Persephone falling in love with the dark, not out of despair, but out of choice. The myths aren't dusty. They're breathing, changing shape, crossing oceans, slipping between academia and fan fiction. They've become our mirrors, our nightlights, our metaphorical therapists. You laugh gently to yourself. Who would have thought that Hephaestus, the limping god of fire, would become the icon of every lonely genius in a garage trying to invent something beautiful? Or that Hermes, the trickster with winged shoes, would be reborn in every email, every meme, every bit of information that flies faster than sound? You walk through a library and you realize the gods no longer need shrines. They have shelves, they have screens, they have you. You who remembers their names, even when the world forgets how to pronounce them. And so you whisper them once more, just to keep them alive. Zeus, Hera, Apollo, Demeter, Hestia, Dionysus, Athena, Artemis, Hades, Persephone. Your voice joins the breeze, and the stories stir again. You walk through twilight now, not the realm of gods, not the world of men, but that in-between place where stories settle after centuries of being retold. The myths feel softer here, not because they've faded, but because they've settled in, like old songs hummed under breath, or a favorite book with cracked spine and dog-eared corners. You pass through schools where kids still learn the names: Zeus, Athena, Apollo. They doodle lightning bolts in the margins of math books. They whisper Medusa during Halloween. They argue over whether Hercules would win in a fight against Superman. And maybe it seems small, but myth was always meant to live in these moments. Not in the grand sacrifices or golden temples, but in everyday magic, in the hush of bedtime, in the pulse of curiosity, in the strange sense of recognition when you hear a story and think, wait, I felt that too. You meet artists who weave myth into paintings, musicians who name albums after Orpheus, filmmakers who turn Troy into slow-motion epics, and writers, oh, the writers, who bring Persephone to high school, or make Hades a soft-spoken romantic. Or imagine what would happen if Athena ran a university library. And though purists sometimes scoff, you know better. This is what myths are for: to move, to evolve, to be reborn not in perfect replicas, but in emotional resonance. Even the ancients did this. They borrowed from the Babylonians, the Egyptians, the Hittites. Zeus has echoes of the sky gods from older lands. The flood in Deucalion's tale? Found in Mesopotamia too. The story of Pandora? A sibling to Eve. The Greeks were remixers before DJs existed. So when you read a new version, don't think of it as dilution. Think of it as participation. You're part of a tradition older than any language. A web of telling and retelling that spans continents and centuries. Each version is a thread. Yours included. You walk past a theater. Posters advertise a new play, Eurydice, by Sarah Rule, a retelling of the underworld from her eyes. You buy a ticket, sit in the dark, cry softly at the line, I will always love you too. Because myth is not about spectacle. It's about recognition. You ride the subway home. Someone beside you reads the Song of Achilles. You nod. You pass a mural of Medusa. Her snakes painted like constellations, her eyes sad, defiant. Beneath her is scrawled a quote, "They made me a monster. I made myself a myth." You pause. That line stays with you. Because maybe that's the secret truth buried beneath centuries of retelling. Myth doesn't just explain the world, it arms you. It gives names to your heartbreaks, faces to your fears, symbols to your longings. It helps you say what prose alone cannot. You walk home beneath a moon that Artemis might once have guided. You hear an owl cry and think of Athena. You glance at the waves and whisper a quiet thank you to Poseidon for letting the tides remain rhythmic. The gods don't demand worship anymore, just remembrance. And in that remembrance, they keep us tethered to something older than science or fact. Something emotional, sacred, unfinished. You tuck yourself into bed, not under Olympus, not beneath prophecy, but wrapped in the comfort of knowing that stories outlive endings, and that the myths aren't behind us. They're around us, within us, waiting always for the next whisper. You lie still now, somewhere between sleep and myth. The journey has been long. From the swirling chaos at the dawn of time, through battles of gods and hearts of mortals, to the quiet corners of modern minds where echoes of Olympus still breathe. You've walked with titans and tricksters, sung with sirens, wept with widows of war, and wandered fields sown with golden apples and bitter truths. And now, you arrive not at an ending, but a folding. A gentle wrapping up of threads once tangled, now softly drawn together, like stories before sleep. You think of Prometheus again, the fire-bringer, chained for loving too much. Of Aphrodite, born from sea foam yet aching like any lover. Of Heracles, the strongest man to ever break. Of Persephone, who chose to become something more than daughter or victim or bride. You remember that each god carried not just power, but paradox. Zeus the ruler, always fearing rebellion. Athena the wise, born from a wound. Dionysus the joyous, dancing on the edge of madness. Even Hades, grim in name, is often the kindest of them all. Never cruel without cause, always keeping his realm in balance. You smile, thinking of how scholars still argue about the details. Did Achilles truly die from an arrow in his heel? Or was that a poetic flourish? Was the Trojan horse a metaphor for deception? Or a real siege engine wrapped in story? Was the labyrinth a real place? or just the shape grief takes when you're trapped inside it. The myths never give straight answers, but that's what makes them eternal. Because when you tell them, you're not memorizing a script. You're joining a conversation, one that began before writing, before borders, before names. A low murmur shared around fires, in temples, across scrolls and scripts and screens. And now, that conversation lives in you. In every time you feel torn between duty and desire, you echo Hector. In every moment you're tempted to turn around too soon, you walk beside Orpheus. When you carry more than you think you can bear, you are Atlas. When you forgive what you thought you never could, you are more than a god, you are human. And perhaps that's the secret all along. That Greek mythology wasn't about how far gods could rise, but how deep humans could feel. You close your eyes. The myths settle behind them like distant constellations, still but glowing. The fates put away their thread. The muses lower their lyres. The gods grow quiet, content to rest until someone calls their names again. And you drift, not into nothingness, but into the echo of everything.